Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for this explainer. Today, we're setting off on a really fascinating journey. We're going to look at how we actually build a meaningful life. And spoiler alert, it's not through an endless string of victories. It's actually done by doing something much harder, but honestly, much more beautiful. We're talking about transforming our failures, our struggles, and those really dark moments into the literal foundation of our character. So let's look at what it actually means to get in the race of life. Let's kick things off with these incredibly powerful words from the late Kobe Bryant. He said, "Walk until darkness is a memory and you become the sun on the next traveler's horizon." Just think about that for a second. There's this quiet, almost hidden promise buried right there in that image. He's not talking about championship rings or taking victory laps here. It's a promise that persisting through the dark actually has a direction. The person who just flat out refuses to let a stumble become a stopping point, they don't just survive. They eventually become a source of light for whoever comes next. And that isn't just some nice motivational quote to put on a poster. It's a really profound theory on how a lasting life is actually built. Okay, let's dive right into this. The core question we really have to ask ourselves is what actually determines how your life goes? Pretty much every single voice we're going to explore today is in conversation with this exact question. And the answer, which surprisingly arrives from every direction, from sports locker rooms all the way to Zen monasteries, well, it's not your innate talent, and it's sure not your starting circumstances. The answer is your character. It's the character that gets forged in difficulty, the kind that's proven when you fail, and expressed in your sheer, stubborn willingness to just keep moving forward. Now, to build that kind of character, we have to start with self-knowledge. William Shakespeare hit the nail on the head when he noted, "It is not in the stars to hold our destiny, but in ourselves." The brilliant strategist Robert Greene talks about this too. He often warns us about paying really close attention to other people, never underestimating anyone or relying purely on instinct. But look, that outward discipline, that's really only half the battle. The other half, the much harder half, is taking that mirror, pointing it squarely inward, and taking absolute 100% responsibility for our own destiny. The spiritual teacher Anthony DeMello has this deceptively simple, kind of funny parable for this. He says, life is like a motor car. It's a vehicle that can absolutely take you to great heights. But here is the tragedy. Most people literally lie down in front of the car, allow it to run them over, and then have the nerve to blame the car for the accident. I mean, it sounds ridiculous when you put it like that, right? But we do this all the time. We constantly blame outside forces for how our lives turn out. Julius Caesar once famously noted that experience is the teacher of all things. But here's the catch. You can't learn a single thing from experience if you refuse to get behind the wheel. You actually have to drive the car. And getting behind the wheel brings us to this really vivid contrast from Hall of Fame football coach Tony Dungy. Think about the massive difference between racing fans and actual drivers. Racing fans, they know every single stat. They watch every qualifying heat. They are incredibly passionate, but they never risk a single thing. On the flip side, you have the actual drivers. To be a driver means, for sure, you are going to take damage. You have to enter the arena. But it's exactly by taking that damage that you build endurance. The fans might know everything there is to know about the race, but they never ever actually get in it. The Apostle Paul actually laid out the exact mechanics of this whole process thousands of years ago in the book of Romans. It operates on this strict 4-step formula. Step 1, trials. Step 2, endurance. Step 3, character. And step 4, hope. Now really notice the sequence here? You literally cannot skip straight to step 4. The person who just stays perpetually on the sidelines waiting for the absolute perfect conditions, they never even start the process. Because without step 1, the trials, you never develop step 2, the endurance. Without endurance, character never forms. And without character, your hope, it has absolutely zero foundation. Country music legend Reba McEntire actually has an incredibly memorable way of putting this. She outlines this sort of anatomy of success using 3 bones. First, the wishbone. That gives you your direction and ambition. Second, the funny bone, which gives you perspective so you don't take yourself too seriously. And let's face it, we all desperately need that sometimes. But it is the backbone, the sheer courage to step into the arena and face those trials we just talked about, that actually makes the other 2 bones useful. Because without the backbone, you're really just a fan in the stands, wishing you were in the car. But let's be totally honest with each other here. Getting in the car, it is terrifying. It means facing the very real, very heavy possibility of failure. I want you to consider this beautiful definition of courage, fear that has said its prayers. Courage isn't some magical absence of fear, not at all. It is feeling the absolute terror of the arena, fully acknowledging it, making your peace with it, and then stepping forward anyway. And sometimes stepping forward does end in heartbreak. Just look at this incredibly clinical record of pure devastation in the sport of golf. Scott Hawk at the 1989 Masters missing a 2-foot putt to win. Doug Sanders at the 1970 Open misses a 3-footer. Even the absolute legends like Ben Hogan and Sam Snead missed short putts that literally cost them major championships. I mean, these misses were agonizing to watch. But remember this, these are not stories of losers, no way. These are stories of a very particular kind of suffering that only comes to those who are good enough, brave enough, and present enough to be standing over that high-stakes putt in the very first place. Now, what's really interesting is how we have to completely recontextualize those failures. As Kevin Kelly points out, there is no limit on better. Talent is distributed unfairly, but there is no limit on how much we can improve what we start with. Failing doesn't make us failures, it simply means we fell short while we were out there playing the game. Think about the spiritual anchor of the Apostle Peter. At the moment of maximum danger, he denied knowing Christ 3 times. I mean, that is a massive, incredibly public failure. Yet he went on to become the absolute rock upon which the church was built. The scale of your failure does not set a ceiling on what comes after it. And that brings us right back to our heartbroken golfers. Because missing that putt, it was absolutely not the end of their story. We have to look at the long game here. Scott Hawk didn't win that Masters, right? But he went on to win 8 PGA tournaments. And Sam Snead, he didn't win that US Open, but he won 82 PGA Tour events. That is more than almost anyone in the entire history of the sport. That devastating missed putt was not the whole book. It was quite literally just 1 page of preparation in a much, much longer story.
Because ultimately, the goal isn't just the trophy. Back in the 1930s, the future novelist Walker Percy was struggling terribly in college. He wrote to his uncle, Will Percy, probably expecting this really stern, punishing lecture. But instead, he received this profound theory of life. His uncle wrote, "Glory and accomplishment are of far less importance than the creation of character." This is that ancient insight confirmed again and again throughout history. Character is fate. It's not your ambition. It's not your raw talent. It's your character.
So the really crucial point here is figuring out how to actually build that character. The great mythologist Joseph Campbell noted that people so often think you save the world by rearranging outward structures or, changing who is in charge. But instead, his advice was this. The thing to do is to find, in your own case, where the life is and become very alive yourself. You don't save the world by pointing fingers at everybody else. You save it by finding your own internal aliveness first. And this brilliantly illustrates the actual mechanical process of doing exactly that. It really boils down to this anatomy of character in 3 simple steps: believe, behave, become. You see, character isn't just something you inherit through your genetics. It is actively constructed. First, you start with a conviction. You believe. Then, you put that conviction into action, especially under pressure. You behave. And over time, that sustained action literally reshapes who you are. You become. But look, we have to be honest about the environment where all this becoming actually happens. As this quote perfectly reminds us, without rain, nothing grows. Learn to embrace the storms of your life. None of the voices we've explored today are pretending that the world is easy. The world is genuinely hard. Putts get missed, people will let you down. The storm isn't necessarily pleasant, but the tension we really have to hold on to is that difficulty is not an obstacle on the road to a meaningful life. Difficulty is the very raw material from which a meaningful life is actually made. So how do we process that raw material? Well, it's through focus. The small things become the big things. It's not about these erratic bursts of intensity when you feel like it. It is about sustained, directed attention to those daily storms. Going back to Julius Caesar for a second, experience is only the teacher of all things if you are actually paying attention to the experience. It's the daily focus on those tiny, seemingly insignificant choices that turns painful experiences into actual, lasting wisdom. Which really brings us full circle, right back to Kobe Bryant's beautiful image from the beginning. And it leaves us with one final, very important question to ask ourselves. Will you walk until you become the sun? Because the sun, it doesn't announce itself, it doesn't brag. It just rises day after day, having survived the dark. So when you get tired on the road, rest if you absolutely must, but keep walking. Don't just be a spectator. Get in the race, embrace those storms, and let your character become the light for the traveler right behind you.